Ao is quite possibly one of the most mysterious characters in ReZero, and it's obvious that he has a relationship with the Oni sisters, namely Ram in particular. So in this video I'm going to be going over whether or not Ao was actually behind the witch cult attack on Ram's village. Before starting, I would like to thank Gourmet of Gluttony for providing the script and the information for this video, and Ice for providing information from untranslated side stories. Anyways, let's begin. So could Ao have been behind or involved in the witch cult attack on the hidden Oni village? And the answer is actually no. Ao is confirmed to have been a sword slave on the gladiator island of Gunnenhive until at the very least 7 years before the start of the story, as we still see him trapped here in the Gekken comic alive story, The Crimson Countess and the Gladiator. Almost all of his dialogue in that story implies he's been hopelessly trapped on the island for well over a decade, miserable and unable to leave. It was also confirmed in the same story by Ao's internal monologue that he was captured and enslaved from nearly the moment from which he arrived in the ReZero world. So why is this actually important? Simple, the attack on the Oni village was 10 years before the start of the story, meaning that the attack took place at a time where Ao was physically not able to be present at the Oni village. Also, keep in mind, Ao couldn't have been associated with witch cult either at the time, as he was a random gladiator trapped on the island for nearly a decade. The idea is that maybe Ao left the island, got involved with the witch cult, attacked the village, and then almost immediately went back to the place he hated with a passion, which is almost impossible not only due to the sheer implausibility of the idea, but because Ao himself also internally confirms he had never once left the island. The same also applies to the idea of Wallachia, for some reason suddenly deciding to provide the witch cult with unexceptionable gladiator slaves to wipe out an already dying race. The idea of Ao being at all involved requires so much convoluted stuff to occur, ranging from him just straight up lying to himself in an internal monologue, the narrative actively lying to the audience, and Wallachia randomly helping the witch cult when the witch cult is a big problem to them as it is for Lugunica as well, and Ao also not escaping despite the fact that his authority would have given him more of enough chance to actually escape. On the subject of Ao's ability, if you would like to see my video covering his ability, be sure to watch this video where I go over his abilities and explain how it works. Tappei makes things complicated with his mysteries. Of course, many mysteries are like Subaru and Flugel, Satella and Emilia, the Elia Forest Seal, and of course the 7-factor door in the Pleiades Watchtower, and of course there are many more. But the sheer amount of conveniences, coincidences, and outright narrative lies it would take to have Ao be a member of the witch cult or be able to somehow get to the Oni village would be astronomically low, and it wouldn't be possible. So then, who was actually behind the witch cult attack on Rem and Ram's Oni village? Well, if you've seen my video called Why Can't Rem Smell the Witch's Scent, I briefly went over a small excerpt on what I believe happened and why Rem can smell the witch's scent. However, let me go into depth about that here. We actually know quite a lot about the witch cultists who attacked Rem and Ram's village due to the hidden Oni village side stories. Many of them appeared to have no greater plan beyond massacring the Oni, and they did not seem to have had a target or objective outside of just murdering everyone and chaos. It didn't seem like an attack with much direction, if any at all. In addition to this, we already have a far more likely candidate for someone who could have been behind the attack if it was planned, and that of course is the Sin Archbishop of Lust, Capella. For those of you that have read the Sloth If story and its prequel, it is a known fact that Capella and several of her cultists have massacred other Oni villages before, even experimenting on their occupants in some cases. One particularly notable experiment on an Oni shown within the Sloth If's prequel causes that Oni, Reese, to develop an ability to smell the witch's scent, an ability she did not have before and one that does not seem to be normal to the Oni. Of course, as stated before, if you would like more information on this, I highly recommend you check my video called Why Can Rem Smell the Witch's Scent? To get back on the topic though, Al most certainly could not have been involved in the attack on the hidden Oni Village, so ideas like him being the one to cut off Ram's horn or Ram cutting off his arm are impossible. On top of that, we know that Al lost his arm in a shop special side story, so he lost his arm on the island, so it couldn't have been Ram that cut it off. The main reason for this misconception is actually due to the fact that there was a poorly translated manga chapter which included some cut content from the anime. As we know, season 1 of the ReZero anime cut out a lot of scenes involving Al, such as him being from Earth. They also cut out an interaction when Subaru and Rem leave the Barrio Manor in episode 16. In this extremely poorly translated manga, which you can see on screen, Al says, "So it's still alive, that makes me sick." Of course, the context of this is referring to the fact that Ram is still alive. So this of course led to people believing that Al hated Ram and Rem and he wanted to somehow kill them, and he was making sure that they were dead or not. In fact, even back when I started making my YouTube channel, I actually made a video insinuating that Al was behind the mansion attack in Arc 2 because I was caught off guard by this misinformation, and that's actually one of my worst videos. But you can see how this misinformation has spread like wildfire. If we look at the light novel translation by Yen Press, or we look at an alternative translation by a translator, you can see that Al doesn't say anything about it being alive. He actually shows no real hostility. We also know that Aldebaran doesn't really want to hurt Ram because we see that in Arc 1, when Subaru is with Emilia in the loot house, there's a side story called Ram's Flirting Refusal. In this side story, Ram is actually in the city looking for Emilia, and she actually bumps into Aldebaran. Aldebaran recognizes her, but Ram doesn't know who Aldebaran is. In this side story, Aldebaran is flirting with Ram, he's speaking to Ram, trying to help her with her issues, so they could help each other find who they're looking for. Of course, Aldebaran is looking for Priscilla. In this side story, Al shows no hostility to Ram. Also, if you look back at the manga chapter, you can see that Aldebaran even said he wasn't going to harm Subaru or Rem. Keep in mind, at the time Priscilla was mad. Priscilla could have killed Subaru or Rem anytime she wanted, and Al could have used that as an excuse to get rid of Rem or Subaru, but he didn't. On top of that, he has his ability, and he could have easily killed Rem and Subaru with his ability, but he didn't. He said he's not gonna hurt them, and he let them go away. So that again shows that he has no aggression, he has no ill intent. It's obvious that something isn't matching up with his memories, and that's the reason why he feels disgusted, rather than him being behind a witch cult attack on the Oni Village or hating Ram or Rem. That's it for this video, and hopefully it cleared out that misconception that Al was attacking Ram and Rem's village, or that he hates Ram or Rem. That isn't true, confirmed in these side stories. So anyways, let me know what you think.